Welcome to our Canvas training today for math and science instructors. This session is designed to offer some STEM-centered use cases for many of the Canvas features that we might not highlight in other Canvas training offerings. We're going to bring in specific examples of how to engage your students, help your students practice content, and even some numerical and equation-friendly methods of assessment, all using the available Canvas tool set. Now, I understand that not all of these ideas can be implemented in all classrooms, so I'm really going to encourage you to find maybe just a few examples that can help enhance your own Canvas experience. And I'd like to kick things off today with RSS feeds. If you're not familiar with RSS feeds, these are news resources that post articles, and most of them post several articles in a day. But these articles are kept live by various news sources. However, even podcasts, some podcasts anyway, have RSS feeds available. Now, these feeds, these articles and podcasts can actually be added to your Canvas course through the announcement index, and they can be shown on the home page if you have that feature enabled. So very quickly, I am going to switch over to Canvas. And if you haven't had a chance to log into Canvas, now would be a great time to do so that you can follow along with me. But once you're in Canvas, let's go into one of your Canvas courses and we'll start there. Now, as I mentioned just briefly, you can control and enable a small selection of your most recent announcements on your course homepage. And these two announcements that you're seeing on the screen right now, those are part of an RSS feed that have already been enabled in this course. These are news articles that were posted here. They are not something that I created myself. So before we talk about how to post a news feed, let's first have a quick reminder of how I can post most recent announcements here at the top of my homepage. And then, of course, the homepage content itself will be shown under those most recent announcements. To have announcements show on your homepage, we are going to come over to your course navigation menu and come all the way down to the bottom of that list where you see the word settings. If you go into your course settings, and once you're here, please make sure that you're on the course details tab. The other tabs, we'll visit a couple of those in our session today, but for now we're on course details. If you go all the way down to the bottom of that space, you will see a more options link. And if you click on more options, there are several different course settings displayed here, but the one we're looking for is the one that says show recent announcements on the course homepage. If you have that box selected, then a drop-down menu will display underneath that checkbox to have you choose how many of your most recent announcements will display on your homepage. Now, we do not recommend more than maybe one or two announcements. If you have more than that, because your homepage displays underneath these announcements, for instance, if I had 8 or 10 announcements displaying there, students would have to do a significant amount of scrolling in order to see the actual homepage itself. So that's why we recommend a very small number of announcements if you do enable this feature. And once you have made any changes here, be sure to come down and save those changes by clicking on the Update Course Details button. If you did just make a change there, feel free to come back to your home page and view your most recent announcements. Of course, if you haven't created any announcements in this course, nothing's going to show up there yet, but it will down the road. Now on to adding an RSS feed. Let's go back over to our course navigation menu and click on the announcements link there. On the right-hand side of that announcement space, you will see an external feeds link. That is specifically for RSS feeds. If you click on external link, it's going to open up a side panel where we can now add and remove RSS feeds at will. In order to add an RSS feed, we are simply going to click on the text that says add external feed, and it's going to first ask us for a URL. That's the website address for the feed itself. And I'm actually going to share a quick link with you in the chat box. So if you want to practice this, maybe you're in one of your practice courses, you can try this out today. The link that I just gave you is actually the link to a BBC News website. And we're not looking, by the way, for those links at the top of the page here. Those are just different areas in this website. What we're actually looking for is some text that actually says news feeds. And so a little bit further down the page, we see these news feeds. They are, of course, categorized by topic. So if I want maybe a technology feed or a science and environment feed, then I can simply click on one of those links and it takes me to the RSS feed itself. Notice that RSS feed is actually part of the text on this screen, and I see the RSS feed logo there. That's letting me know that I am in the right place. All of these links that I see here are specific news articles. So if I click on one of those links, it's going to open up the article itself. Now that's going to be important in just a moment. But for now, I'm going to go back to where I just see those article titles. If I zoom in a little bit, notice that not only do I see the title of the article, I see a little snippet of information as to what that article is about. And again, that's going to come in handy to know in just a moment. But what we're looking for, once I decide that maybe this is a feed I want to provide for students, I'm actually going to come up to the URL or website address at the top of the page, and I am going to copy that link. Coming back to Canvas, I am going to simply paste that link in place, and then I have a decision to make. Here in your announcement space, you have 3 different ways to post these articles. You can potentially post the full article should you choose to. However, that takes up a lot of space here in your announcement feed, and your regular course announcements could be lost inside of all that shuffle. So that is one that, while possible, is not one that's highly recommended. You also can post only the link to the article. That doesn't tell the students what the article is about. It just gives them a link they can click on and view the article itself. The one in the middle, the truncated version, this is a personal favorite of mine. That is going to show exactly what I showed you on the feed page just a moment ago, where you could see the title of the article and the snippet of the article itself. In fact, I have 3 articles that have already been posted here, and the truncated version is actually what you're seeing. Students could then click on any of those announcements and open up the article to read. So this is going to be up to you how you want those articles to display. But remember, to kind of browse through these and decide which one is right for you and your students. There is a way to filter what articles actually post here. These news feeds will post several articles in a day typically, and so we really could get a lot of articles here. If you want to cut down on which articles actually post in your course, you can check this box that says only add posts with a specific phrase in the title. And then you can put whatever phrase you want. If you want something about geography, then you can put geography in that box. You can only add one word or one phrase in this filter box. There is not a way for me to add multiple filters at a time. However, if you do want to have multiple filters, a workaround for that is to go ahead and add this feed with one of the filters, and then I can add this feed again, same exact feed, and I can put in another phrase or word that's going to, post articles here. So maybe I want any article that talks about calculus, I can add that feed as well. And the same feed can appear multiple times. All right, I'm going to come up and X out of that side panel, but I do want to make one last mention with RSS feeds. RSS feeds cannot go back in time and post old articles. Once you add an external feed to a Canvas course, it will only post articles that fit your criteria from that point forward. So you won't have any articles instantly appear here. It will take some time. But one way that I do utilize these articles in my class is every week I give my students an assignment where they have to come to the announcement feed. They find an article of interest and they give me a little opinion or a rundown of that article. So it is a great way to start pulling in some outside sources in your Canvas course. Now, before I give you some time to practice adding those RSS feeds, let's also talk about discussions. Discussions are a fantastic way to encourage engagement in your classroom. They can be used to bring in kind of outside the classroom applications, just like those RSS feeds could potentially do. You can also use them to help develop those all-important critical thinking skills. Let me show you a couple of examples of those engagement discussions. Let me get to the right place in my course. It's being a little bit slow, but I have some for math and I have some for science. I'm going to go to my math discussions first. I, again, give a weekly discussion called a math talk. And of course, I put some norms in place so that students don't think that they can go in and be rude to their colleagues or peers. But I just ask them a generalized question that makes them think. I don't give them any hints or anything along those lines. But for instance, what's the fewest number of people surveyed if exactly 93.6 of the people asked completed the survey? And I get lots of different answers, right? 1,000, I get 47, I get 57. I've had lots of different answers here. Students can ask for clarification, and then I go back and ask students to explain exactly how they got that value. There are lots of different ways that you can kind of make this happen. Let me show you another. This one, I actually gave students a video to a new topic and asked them to identify an outside of class example where this concept would actually apply. And I did ask them to reply to a couple of classmates' posts, By the way, with discussions, you can require that a student posts before they see other students' replies. So there's lots of important settings for you to look for. And another just FYI, every so often, and maybe your students don't do this, but I sometimes will get some kind of snarky comments. As an instructor, I can go in and delete those types of comments. You also have some course settings where you can ask or enable students to be able to delete or edit their own replies. So kind of keep that in mind when you're creating these types of discussions. The next one, and this is the last one that I'm going to show you today, this one was actually used as an assignment in the class. This is a graded discussion, not an opinion piece, but the students were creating infographics. And instead of submitting them as a typical Canvas assignment, which is kept very private, with an assignment, no student can see another student's submission. But with discussions, that's not the case. So students wanted to show off their hard work. And so I made this, a graded discussion. I even attached a rubric to this graded discussion. So it was easier for me to grade, but students could come in and post their work, right? And this was a great way for them to kind of utilize some of those features. Again, this integrates with a grade book. I can add a rubric, as I mentioned. I still grade this in the speed grader, but it's a fantastic way to share work with other students in the class. Now, one more before I give you some hands-on time. Let's talk about a couple of LTI tools that can be helpful in your classes. So I'm going to switch back over to Canvas here. And at this point, I want to go back down to our course settings. Down here in your settings, of course, we have all of those tabs. We are going to go over to the Apps tab at this point. There are over or right around 500 different applications that can be added and utilized in your Canvas accounts. A few of these are paid applications, and some of them, even the ones that aren't paid, you still have to have an account with some of those groups. For instance, if you use Flipgrid, which is now known as Flip, right? If I click on one of those applications and try to add it, if it asks you for a key and secret, that means that I have to have an account with this company in order to be able to use it inside of Canvas. Again, sometimes even free applications do require that you have an account with that company. But let me show you a couple of the free options where you don't have to have an account and give you a little heads up on how to find important apps. There is a filter box where it says filter by name. This is just my search box where I can search for specific applications like Flip or, Quizlet or something like that. Or I can even search by subject. So if I want to search for just math appropriate apps, I can get a selection of math apps. Here's a Quatio, for instance, a graph builder. Math type is in here. Oh, there it is. Math type is in here. Nearpod is in here. There's so many different applications that can be used inside of Canvas. And a lot of these, so let me come down to like the GeoGebra graphing calculator. If I click on that application tile and go to add this app to my course, this one doesn't even ask me for a key and secret. That means that it's totally free. I don't have to have an account to use it. And I can simply add that app to my Canvas account. Let me go back to that big list of apps. I'm going to click on View App Center. If I were to search for something like science, there is an interactive periodic table that you can add, a guide to the solar system. There's so many great things here. But there is one application in particular that I want to show you today, and it is called the Redirect tool. Redirect. And it looks like this kind of blue swirly arrow. That's the one that we're looking for. This application allows me to add custom links to my course navigation menu. That is kind of hard to do outside of this application. So let me show you a little bit about how this works. I'm going to go ahead and click on that redirect tile and click on the Add App button there. This one just asks me for a name and a URL. So let me open up a new tab really quickly, and I am going to go to maybe a website that shows us all of the recent earthquakes, right? This is just the USGS live earthquake map. If this were something that I wanted to provide for my students, or, maybe the Desmos graphing calculator or a random number sequence generator, there's websites for all kinds of things. All I would need to do is grab hold of this URL, kind of like what we did with the RSS feed. I'm just going to copy the URL, come back to Canvas, and paste it in this URL box. Please be careful that HTTPS is not listed twice. Let me go back to the beginning so I can just double check. Sorry, that takes a minute for me to do. But if HTTPS is listed twice, it will give you an error. So be really careful there. We also want to name this link. If you don't rename it, you're going to get several links potentially that are all called the redirect tool, and that's not very helpful. So I'm going to name this my earthquake map. Besides the name and the URL, we do have a selection of options down below. Forcing this open in a new tab is going to be a must. These types of websites will not open up in the Canvas platform. They are going to need to be opened up in a new tab in your browser. And we do want to show this in my course navigation menu. The account navigation and user navigation, those are administrative actions, so those are not for instructors to use. But all I need to do is add that app. I'm going to click on the Add App button. And as soon as I refresh the page, it does require a quick refresh. Now I have the earthquake map here in my course navigation menu. And let me close those other tabs. As a student, if I click on that link, I'm going to see a button to open it up in a new tab, and I have instant access anytime it's needed. So custom links are absolutely a possibility with that redirect tool. So now I want to give you just a little bit of time to try adding an RSS feed or start creating an interactive discussion or add some sort of tool using that redirect option. And if you want to share with someone else what you've added, feel free to share. But since we don't have our chat box open in a recording, we'll kind of ignore number 3 for today. But let me give you just a minute to practice, and then we'll continue. All right, let's move on to some collaborative pieces in your Canvas courses. And we're going to start with some wiki pages. When you create a page in Canvas, by default, only the instructor of the course has editing rights to those pages. However, if you want to, let me come down to Pages for just a moment in my course navigation menu, and let me find a quick page in my course. or maybe I'll just create a new one. That might be a little easier. But underneath the rich content editor, where we actually build our page content, there is an option to allow others to edit this page. There is a simple drop-down menu where, of course, only instructors in the course is the default option, but you can change that to teachers and students. That gives students, all students in the class, rights to edit this page as well. There is an anyone option, but just a side note, anyone will include any observers or TAs or anyone else that has access to your course. So it is highly recommended that if you're creating a wiki page, you just stick with the teachers and students option. Now, once that happens, and let me go back to my modules for a moment. I'm not going to save that right now. Let me show you some examples of how we have been using those wiki page options. The first example is what we used to call a KWL chart, a know what learn chart. We were talking about prime factorization in our course, and I let students put what you know about factoring, what you'd like to learn, and later on they went in and added what they have learned. You'll notice that the students' initials are at the end of each of their comments, but this is just a table on the on the page, and students can go in and make edits. I also quite often use those wiki pages for homework help. That way, it's not just me that can give help on homework. Other students in the course could go in and participate as well. The next one, we called this our geology walk. We lived in a deserty area where there were lots of mesas. So students could, even from their homes, they could take pictures of different mesa formations. They could share their pictures on this page, and I gave them some instructions on what to include with their picture. The last one, this one's a little, sorry if this is kind of gross, but they were doing a dissection, and so I let them share their dissection information. Besides wiki pages, let's talk about embedded content. Interactive content is always something that can benefit a course. It doesn't matter what you teach, interactive content will do more for your students than the written word. So let's talk about using something called embed code. The symbol you see on the screen, this kind of two-sided arrow with a slash in the middle, that is the symbol for HTML code. Some of you might be really familiar with HTML and already know how this works, but just about everything on the internet has or is created and utilizes some form of HTML. Not everything, of course, but a good chunk. So if I go to some place like, let's say YouTube, right? If I open up a video, and I'm going to make sure that this is paused so that we don't have to listen to it right now. If you go to the share option with just about anything on the internet, quite often you will see an embed feature. Now, notice I have that double-sided arrow. It doesn't have the slash in the middle. Sometimes the slash will be there, sometimes it doesn't. But if I click on any embed option, there is a little bit of code involved with this content. So here I see some embed code for this YouTube video. I also have a very favorite website called FET, and I'm actually going to put this link in the chat box so that if you've never experienced this website, you'll have a chance to go and view it. This is the University of Colorado Boulder. Several years ago, they received a grant to create some interactive STEM simulations. So once you're there, if you look at that simulations tab, you're going to see lots of different STEM topics. And if you click on one of those topics, there are many, many dozens of different interactive activities. I'm going to click on this skate park one as an example today. And underneath, well, I can practice this simulation here, by the way. Underneath, I see that little embed code option, that little HTML symbol. If I click on it, again, it brings up a little bit of HTML code or computer code. And what we want to do, whether it's a video or a simulation or anything else, we're just going to copy that code. That's all we have to do. We don't have to know anything about coding. This site gives me a very convenient copy to clipboard link to help me copy all of that code. And when I come back to Canvas, I can go to maybe a page or an assignment or a quiz or really anywhere that I use a rich content editor. And under the insert menu, there is an embed tool. This embed tool allows me to paste any embed code. And once I click on submit, that content is now part of my course. Now, this simulation doesn't actually live in my course. It is technically a link back to that website, but my students won't know that. For my students, this will be a native part of their course. And if somebody ever goes in and updates that simulation, those changes will automatically be reflected in my course. But I love these simulations because students can come in and it's almost like they're playing a game, but they can learn how this works. We can see what happens when gravity is turned off, for instance. But these are amazing. Embed code, like I said, can be found all over the internet, and I really encourage you to look around and find some. Now, I do want to show you one more quick tool. We found this not too long ago. There's something on the internet called an iframe generator. And if you want to use some interactive content, like I have an interactive geo board that I use sometimes. But this particular website doesn't have any embed code. So at first glance, it doesn't look like I can use this inside of Canvas. But if I copy the URL and go to my iframe generator, I can actually put the URL in place and it will help me generate the embed code I need. So I can copy it, come back to my page. Let me come down a little further. And again, use that embed option and be able to pull just about anything into my course. Now, the last thing I want to say about this, and then we need to move on, is that this is kind of small, right? They're not taking up the whole page. I can definitely use with making that a little larger. Notice at the bottom of your RCE, you see that exact same symbol. If you click on that symbol, it changes your entire rich content editor into HTML code. So if you're familiar with HTML, you can absolutely create content here. However, even someone like me that's not familiar with coding, even I can pick out things like width and height. And this is editable. So if I want to change this to, I'm going to say 900 pixels wide by maybe 600 pixels high. If I go back down and click on that symbol again, notice that I just changed the size of that interactive geoboard. So feel free, I wouldn't change anything other than the width and the height, and the width can even be a percentage, but that's a story for another day. But you know, you can kind of play around with those and see exactly how you want that to be displayed in your Canvas course. All right, again, I'm not going to save this today. I'm going to do this again a little later, but now let me pause again for just a moment and give you maybe just 30 seconds to maybe try embedding something off the internet, and then we'll move on from there. All right, let's now move on to student annotation. This assignment type has been more helpful to me than just about any other assignment type in Canvas. Close, anyway. So there is an assignment submission type when building an assignment in Canvas called student annotation. So let me switch back over to my course for a moment, and I'm going to go into my assignment space and create a brand new assignment today. I'm just going to call this my student annotation demo. And I'm going to go back and delete this later. But quite often, we will get instructors who try to put content into the RCE for students to edit. And just a reminder that anything you put in the rich content editor cannot be edited by students. This is a dedicated place for things like learning goals and instructions, all of those types of things that you want to provide for your students. It is not a place to put any type of file that you want your students to actually work on. So down below the RCE, and we do go over all of these settings in detail in our assignments trainings, I'm going to focus on the submission type. We're not really going to talk about any of the other assignment settings today, but submission type has lots of great submission types for you to utilize. But under submission type, if you choose the online option, there you will see a student annotation feature. If you select student annotation, here's what's going to happen. You are going to be able to upload a file. Now, this is intended for those static files that students typically can't edit. Even if they make a copy of that file, they still can't edit it. Something like maybe an image file or a PDF. If you've been around as long as I have, I used to have paper copies of all my worksheets. And over the years, I scanned them, and now I have a PDF copy of all of them sitting on a flash drive. Well, what this is going to allow me to do is upload one of those PDF files, or again, some kind of file that students typically cannot edit. And it's going to give students a set of digital annotation tools where they can type or write or draw or mark up that file. So let me hurry and upload a file today. And I think I have, let me hurry and find it. Oh, I forgot to put my worksheet on here. I'm just going to put a random PDF. But you can upload pretty much any type of file. It cannot be a cloud-based file, though. It does have to be on your hard drive or flash drive. So again, not a cloud-based file. I'm also going to select the file upload option because there's something I want you to see there in addition to student annotation. Now I'm simply going to come down and save and publish this assignment for just a few minutes so that I can show you exactly what that's going to do on the student end. I'm going to come up to student view to show you exactly what that student annotation assignment will do for your students. And your view of the assignment area might look a little different than mine. I have some tabs going on right now. But with student annotation, and let me refresh my page because the student annotation pieces are not actually showing up. There we go. Oh, they just collapsed again. Let me see if I can make this a little bit larger. Oh, there they are. But students are going to be given some annotation tools, some digital annotation tools. so that they can do things like pinpoint an area of the file. And anytime they make an annotation, they'll be able to leave a comment. So they can say, where should I put my name? Right? There's not a name area. I don't know, whatever your students are going to want. They can do things like highlight on this file, so they can highlight some text. So let me hurry and highlight this text, and notice they can choose their own colors as well. But again, any annotation they put here, and they can leave a comment as well. So this is the wrong year. But there is even a text box where they can type on the file. There's a strike through option, a free draw option, so they can actually write. This is a lot easier, by the way, if they have some kind of touch screen and a stylus. But imagine if they were doing a worksheet, they could actually show their work, right? Put their answers, whatever you need them to do. There's even a selector tool where they can select an entire section of the file and leave you a comment there as well. Students are going to be able to submit this assignment with all of their annotations intact. And you, in turn, when you go and grade this in the speed grader, you're going to be able to, let me hurry and leave student view so that I can show you. Let me go into speed grader. You're going to be able to see all of their annotations and even add more annotations of your own in leaving feedback for this student. So hopefully you can see why I absolutely love the student annotation option. This is something that my students used all the time when we were on quarantine and they couldn't come and hand me a paper copy of this assignment. It was absolutely fantastic. Now, I also said that there was something special with a file upload assignment type. I do want to hurry and mention that as well. Anytime a student chooses a file upload, they can upload a file, whether it's off a hard drive, flash drive, or even off a Google Drive or OneDrive. But there's always going to be an option with a file upload to use their webcam to take a picture of an assignment and send you a digital copy. This is a great way to have a backup of any work that your students do, especially if they're turning in a paper copy. They can still hurry and take a quick picture and hand you the paper copy besides. So you will always have a backup in case of emergencies. This is a fantastic feature when students are away from class and they can still submit an assignment to you. All right, before we go any further, let me go ahead and leave student view, and let me give you just a few seconds to try creating a student annotation assignment. Make sure that you upload a file from your device. It cannot be a cloud-based file, and go ahead and test it out in student view. I'm going to give everybody just a minute of time to finish that up, and then we'll continue. All right, now let's talk about assessments and the equation editor found in Canvas. These are some of the hardest things to deal with as a STEM instructor. Right? Assessments are always a sticky point. I'm going to show you a few things inside of Canvas that hopefully can make your life just a little bit easier. Sorry, I'm closing some tabs here. But the first thing I want to show you is we actually have a sample math and science quiz that's found in Canvas Commons that can help you kind of navigate and have some examples of some specific math and science question types. So I'm going to switch back over to Canvas for a moment. And over in your global navigation menu, you should see a link there for Commons. Now, it is possible for your Canvas administrator to turn off your access to Commons. So if you're not able to follow along during this portion, don't be dismayed. You are just fine. But if you search for math and science quiz up here in the search bar, you should see a math and science quiz. There's a few copies of this quiz here. This is actually my name. I'm one of the ones that shared it to Canvas Commons. But in order to pull this into your practice course, all you need to do is click on the title of this quiz. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see an import option. So I need to import, and then I'm going to select whatever course I want to import this into. You can choose multiple courses, but since this is just a sample, I'm going to recommend that you just import this into a single course for now. And remember, it can be deleted later. And then I'm going to import into my course. It should just take a few seconds for that to actually import, but let me just go back and review that quickly again. I clicked on Commons to access Canvas Commons, and if this is the first time that you've ever accessed Commons, it might come up with a big authorize button. That just gives you access to Commons. So please don't feel like it's giving anyone access to your Canvas account or access to any of your courses. We are searching up at the top for math and science quiz. And again, there's a couple of copies out there. This is the one that I'm going to use today. Just click on the title, the blue import button, choose a course, and then import. Once it has been successful, you are going to see a green bar at the top of the screen that says you've successfully started the import, and it will only take a few seconds to show up in your whatever course you imported that to. But for now, I'm going to go back to my dashboard and back into my course. I've already imported that quiz into this particular course. So let me scroll down just a little bit and find that math and science quiz. I'm going to give everyone maybe just again 30 seconds or so. If you want to import that math and science quiz, I want you to be able to have time to. So maybe again, just 30 seconds, and then we'll continue. All right. So now let's dive in and take a look at that quiz. This does come in my instance as what we call a classic quiz. So if you are using new quizzes, please know that it's going to look just a little different. But I'm going to go in and edit this quiz just so that we can view some of those quiz questions. And I'm going to open these up so that we can kind of review the different types of questions that might be most helpful to you. This first set of questions are what we call numerical questions. Numerical questions just simply allow students to respond with a number. It doesn't let them put in any sort of text, only numbers, and you get to decide how much accuracy this answer actually needs to have. You can put a number of precision or a number of decimal places or even a range that your students can fall in to be counted as correct. These numerical question types are computer scored. So once you have created the question, Canvas will do all of the rest of the work for you. But one thing to consider, because, for instance, this first question where we have to determine molecular weight, because students can't type in any kind of text, it doesn't allow them with this question type to combine numbers with maybe the units that go along with that answer. So typically, I create a secondary question for the units, and this is like a text-based question. You could potentially do a fill in the blank question type with two blanks so that you could put both in the same question, but that's going to be up to you. Again, another type of numerical question with an area of precision or a level of precision. Sorry about that. Here's one of the numerical questions with a range. We have the square root of 3 times the square root of 11. And instead of having a certain precision, I just simply put a range. Anything between 5.74 and 5.75 is going to be counted as correct. Maybe not the most accurate, but again, if you don't want to worry about the measure of precision or a specific number of decimal places, then you can absolutely do that. It is possible to have an exact answer with numerical questions. We're just going to put a 0 margin of error. So I do have a word problem here too that I used and created in that numerical structure. One of my favorite question types is the formula question. It simply allows me to put some sort of variable, and you can put multiple variables in a question, but then you can put a range of values that will be acceptable for that variable. So in this case, X can be any value between 1 and 150. I've even allowed 1 decimal place. Canvas will come up with up to 200 different versions of this question. It's going to give you various values for X, and whatever the answer should be, you actually create a LaTeX formula for the answer. We'll talk about LaTeX in just a moment. But I have put in that the square root of whatever X is should be the appropriate answer. So Canvas is actually calculating those answers for me. I love this formula question because, again, potentially, if I have students sitting side by side, they won't get the same question, or at least, there's a very good statistical chance that they won't. Here's another Formula 1. It's a word problem, and there are 2 variables in this particular question, right? An A and a B. I have put in my range of values. In this case, I said I don't want any decimal places. And now I have my possible solutions. And of course, my answer will be calculated by the square root of A squared plus B squared. You can even use things like trigonometry and calculus inside of that formula question, right? The correct answer here, we need to change this one. It wasn't supposed to be the square root of 12 for my answer. It was supposed to be the square root of, the cosine of X. It was not supposed to be an exact answer. Let me hurry and save this question. Oh, did I not? Oh, recompute. There we go. Anyway, I'll go in and fix that a little bit later. But but you get to put in all of those options. You can even put variables in expressions. It might take a little more creativity there, but it is absolutely possible. And now, of course, I've got one in calculus as well. Now, you can be very, very simple with your questions. I know that lots of us go towards true false or multiple choice questions. You can absolutely do that. There is an equation editor that allows you to put just about any type of equation here in Canvas, but that's going to kind of be up to you. There is also something to be said about the good old essay question type. An essay question cannot be computer scored. Essays and file uploads are the only 2 question types that can't be computer scored. So in this case, I needed a more thorough answer and explanation for my students. So an essay question, even though I have to go in and score this one, sometimes it's worth it. And finally, I know that showing work is always going to be a great consideration for all of us. And with digital assessments, that is a little more troublesome. So remember with the file upload assignment option, there was that picture option where they could take a picture of their paper and submit a digital copy. They'll be able to do the same thing here inside of a quiz. This is usually how I have students give me their work for a digital assessment, and then I still have them give me the paper copy as well, but just a couple of ideas. Now I'm going to come down. I'm going to hurry and delete this question. I don't know who created that one, but I want to talk to you briefly about the equation editor here inside of Canvas. I'm going to go ahead and create a new question temporarily. And in your equation editor, and by the way, the equation editor can be found here in your set of icons or in your insert menu. But one thing to know about the equation editor is not all operations and equation setups are going to be able to be found here in the equation editor itself. For instance, systems of equations, that is not in the default set of tools. And I know that's a sticky point for a lot of us, but I'm going to share a resource with you because this particular equation editor uses LaTeX code. And down at the bottom of my equation editor, I can see that toggle switch where I can directly edit some LaTeX code. Well, that paper or Google Doc that I just shared actually has some samples of some LaTeX code. And I have a sample on there for a system of equations. So you can do a Google search for the LaTeX code for literally any type of equation. All you need to do is copy and paste some LaTeX code. If you already know how to use LaTeX code, you can just create it from scratch. But now I can just come in and change the various values and make that work for me. So now that I have that equation in place, I'm going to go ahead, or system of equations, I'm going to now save it. And I can always click on that equation and go back and edit. You're also able to resize equations when you've created them using that equation editor. So please don't feel like all is lost if you cannot find the set that you need, those set of tools that you need. And by the way, for those answer choices, especially on classic quizzes, that kind of looks like it's just going to be a text box option. But if you come over to the right-hand side of the screen, when you go to enter answer choices, there's a little edit pencil there, and it will open up a full rich content editor complete with an equation option. So Canvas is not going to do everything you want it to do. We actually have some add-on tools that can be a little helpful there. But just to let you know, there are some equation types that can be extremely helpful here inside of Canvas. So the last thing I want to do today is to give you a chance to try putting some LaTeX code directly into the equation editor and save that equation and just maybe give it a try, right? You can even go back and edit that equation at a later time. So let me give everybody a minute to try that, and then we'll wrap up our session. All right, to wrap up today, let's just go over a couple of considerations. New quizzes, I showed you a classic quiz today, but new quizzes will have the exact same question types that classic quizzes have, and there's some advanced features there like shuffling questions and locking those none of the above multiple choice options in place, right? There's some great advanced features there that you might find extremely helpful. In addition, with new quizzes, you can even align each question to one or more outcomes or standards. So again, new quizzes have that exact same functionality, but there's even more. So we encourage you to go and check that out at some point. The equation editor in new quizzes, at the time of this recording, has a different RCE. So that equation editor currently uses MathQuill and not LaTeX. However, the typical RCE is coming soon to new quizzes. So very soon you will be able to use that LaTeX code in new quizzes as well. And finally, I know that graphing is always difficult because Canvas does not currently have any graphing question types. But for now, let me just suggest taking a screenshot of an equation or graph and inserting the image into a question in Canvas can help for now anyway in math and science assessments. Don't forget to include those alternative text items when using any image, including graphs or equations in Canvas. Well, thank you, everybody. That is going to bring us to the end of our session.